Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays presented by the Gokhstein News Network. I am your host, Landy. Today is September 22nd, 2025, and Bitcoin is showing a bit of a warning sign to the bulls here. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, and I am going to take a look at Ethereum as well, as it has done something that I said basically the bulls need to watch out for if the bears can push below a certain level. Especially on closes, and now we have seen that come to fruition as well. But we're going to start with Bitcoin on the 5-day time frame because that just closed today with the Monday candle. And of course, we will take a look at the weekly, but the 5-day is showing some warning signs right now. And I want to point out a few different things. First thing that I want you to notice here is that while Bitcoin has been consolidating, right, after having some consolidation here from the March of 24 to the basically the breakout in November when we got some high volume. Then we saw some sideways and down price action. We saw some high volume coming in and then some lower volume down to actually find the low in a retest of the prior range over here on the high side. And then now we've had volume dropping substantially coming into this current consolidation. And even during the actual all-time high run, we saw substantially lower volume. And what this has led to, especially since Bitcoin broke out and made some new all-time highs, they're really only slightly new all-time highs in the macro timeframes here. Now, granted, quite a nice move off of the last lows of the prior range, and the breakdown to retest. But in this case, we can see that we went from downside expansion and then here on the 5-day have just, mean reverted back to the top side and continued to push the upper second standard deviation. And now we see we are back in compression with very, very low volatility. So the 5-day is giving us a warning sign that if this follows through on the weekly, we could potentially see, a more bearish outlook. And why is that? Well, because we have lower lows and a lower high. So we had a trend break on the 5-day. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. And this trend break occurred. We're going to go ahead and throw on a swing chart here just so it's easier to see. We had the uptrend off of the actual lower lows here. We had the trend break, the higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and now we are in lower low, lower high territory. So this is a trend reversal setup. And how does this kick off? Well, this would kick off for the bears on any closes back below the 107.250. This is also where the last higher low is on the weekly, but it was a lower low on the 5-day chart. So this is a little bit of a warning sign that if we start to see the 5-day follow through to the bottom side here, we're very likely going to see a lower high in the weekly that I'm going to point out here in a moment, which would be a trend reversal setup to possible trend break. In this case, we already have a trend break into trend reversal setup. With the closure of the 5-day candle on the Monday session, still Monday for me, but the Tuesday session is open right now, we have the reversal setup in place. Now, the next target for the bears would actually be the close open around 111.250, and then the actual support structure over here at 110.3. Of course, we've got some high side structure down below, but realistically, before we get to the rest of the high side structure, it's basically 109, which is a major weekly level, right? 109 is the weekly higher low setup on a closing basis, essentially. It's like 108, 109 area. And in this case, the next target would be the 107.250. Essentially, from the look of this, the trend reversal setup looks to want to go to test for a continuation and trend confirmation, right? So trend break, reversal setup, confirmation would be on closes below 107.250. Now that would also start to initiate expansion. We see the etchings of it because Bitcoin is trading and has closed below the basis band now. But any closes below the lower first, we'll start to see BBWP increase. And the next big target would be that low. at 107,250 to the lower second standard deviation around 106. Now, I would say there's dailies around there around 104, 105 that would very, very likely be tested. And any closes below there, we'd actually get 5-day expansion, right? And then we're looking over to the high side structure and the low side structure over here for the 5-day. But realistically, we're going to get another 5-day close before this weekly closes, right? So the next 5-day close will be on Saturday, and that's going to tell us a lot about how the weekly is going to close. So I wanted to really emphasize this and point this out, that this setup is a bear setup. And that doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition, right? Right now, Bitcoin is consolidating after coming off of the lower low structure and then entering an uptrend, hit full trend, and then reversed with the trend break to trend reversal setup. So it's just a setup right now. Confirmation of this setup would be below the 107,250. Now, I'd mentioned, we needed to see closes above 118, and we did hit 118 essentially. Right here, 117,998.17 is essentially 118. We hit that. We did not close above it. I've been short for a while. I reloaded shorts up there. We'll see if that works out. But you still got to see shorts getting pushed out above. At minimum 118 for a little bit of repositioning, and then I don't think they get pushed out until we see closes above 121. So, essentially below 118 and especially 121, this is a bearish setup. And this is where we should be paying attention to the 5-day as it relates to the weekly here, because the weekly is in a trend reversal setup as well. So we have the swing trend is a downtrend. So higher high, lower low, lower high, and then trend reversal setup would be lower low. Now what's important about this is a complex high. Even though the trend on a swing basis is down, on a closing basis, this is a complex high to a higher low. If this breaks, we'd have a reversal setup on the weekly to a trend break to the downside on a closing basis, and continuation of the reversal setup for the swing trend, which is already down. But as it stands right now, that trend is not down on the weekly in terms of closes, not yet. But the 5-day, it is. And that's where, a lot of people are getting a little antsy and unsure of where things are going in the market. And this includes a lot of players in traditional markets as well. Now, they're just riding it out with some of the high structure that's going on in traditional markets, and of course, gold, silver, and the rest. But realistically, we're seeing some positioning for Q4 this week. And if it does result in breaks on Bitcoin, I would expect continuation. Not that we'd get it, but that would be the expectation. Now, the weekly is in a compression. We have 0 BBWP. This is about as compressed as you can get. I mean, we could get the SMA here floored, but realistically, this is setting up for the next big move. And the next big move could be down to, break some weekly downtrend, or it could just hang out around the basis band, which is right where Bitcoin is right now, around the 107 or 111, 112 range, which is something that I had talked about last week. If we saw breaks below 114.750, expect 113.5 to 112. We essentially got that move initially. And now we'll talk about that on the daily and what to look for on some further downside, but and what criteria the bulls need to meet to make the picture look a little bit better for themselves. But in this case, if we did see the weekly drop the low at 107.250, I would expect somewhere around 104, 106. Essentially, median of that would be 105, right around the lower first standard deviation. That's also an important daily level. And we'll take a look at that in just a moment. Anywhere below there, we look to 112, which is 101, and that is the last higher low prior to this closing higher low that we just had come in a couple of weeks ago. That's right at 101 to that 98 to 225. But that would be the next big area to watch, would be this higher low in a weekly. And this would, of course, if we saw price getting down here and especially closing anywhere near here, that would be a reclaim of the highs, testing the higher low. If it starts to break below, we'd be hitting weekly expansion to the downside. So understand that that is the setup right now for the bears. In order for the bulls to pull off, a bear squeeze, they got to start closing back above this last swing high at 118. This does not change on the daily. It is now the same confluent level on the 5-day and weekly. So just bear that in mind. When we go and we take a look at the daily, let's go ahead and turn on the support and resistance zones of interest. There is quite a bit of support below in the local area here. Let's go ahead and turn on. Do I need this? What do I want? No, I want local 2. Yeah, local 2 is fine. And we'll get rid of this. All right. So I've changed this daily chart a little bit to reflect that this is the last closing weekly higher low, which is also this daily structure over here, this daily consolidation before going in, making the high at 123 and then pushing up towards our next target at 125, hitting 124.5. If we do see on the daily here, you can see that just below yesterday's low is the lower second. So if we start looking, or lower first, I'm sorry. If we start looking at price breaking below 112 again, pay very close attention to yesterday's low. It's around the daily lower first. The next big area of interest would be inside of these dailies, right around 109.7 to essentially 111. It's 110.8, but it's about 109.5 to 111 here, right? What is that? 111. Yeah, we'll call it 111. Sorry. Got a little mixed up with the numbers there. Got too much going on the screen here for even myself. So I apologize ahead of time, but this is very important. If we start to see Bitcoin closing below yesterday's low of 111.761, that's also where the daily lower first is. Then we look to the next big daily area around 111 to essentially 109.5 by the lower second standard deviation. Anywhere below there, we would likely see price testing 109, and then that endangers, of course, this weekly higher low structure down here at 108.250 to 107.250, of course. That would be the continuation area for and confirmation area for the 5-day and the weekly as well. That would be a trend break on the weekly. That would be continuation of the reversal setup on the 5-day. Next big area to target would be right around the 104 to 106. Taking the median of that, we have a daily in here at 105. Anywhere below there, 103.5 to 103.7. And then the big zone there at 101 to that 98.225. And that would look pretty bearish. But all of that said, macro uptrending structure would not really be affected. And I'm talking about the monthly. And, essentially, we'll go take a look at the monthly. But the only way that I would be changing my stance on this is on closes above 118 now. We could even see pushes and bounces back up to 114.750, that swing low outside of the primary range up there, the tighter range before the dump out to 112 and run up to 124.5. But in this case, we could see price action pushing back up to 114.750, 115.7, and then even the 117.8 to 118 up here. But closes below here mean nothing. We need to see that area break back to the upside to go and push even up to the upper second, which is now right there in lower term time frames. I've talked about this 118.650. You don't want to see swings there that fail. We would want to see closes that start to push up to 120 to 121, and only on closes above there would I be looking for the highs and potentially higher again between 123 and 125 and potentially 128 to 130. But at the moment, it is a bearish setup. But again, putting it in context, this is the last week before a monthly and quarterly close. And, we do have some flash PMI data coming out tomorrow. We'll see if that has really any effect. I think that some of what the market is trying to position for is based on what some of the FOMC speeches were about today. We have some more throughout the week, including the flash PMI, just kind of giving that indication that I don't think the Fed is, well, there is one a gentleman who's very aggressive on he wants 50 basis point cuts. And just about others are saying the same thing that I've been talking about for a while. The Fed is between a rock and a hard place with their mandates between employment and inflation. So I think the market's sentiment maybe this week we'll see what, and even the bidding, by the way, is not pricing in any kind of further cuts, even though we're seeing a lot of speculation about 2 more cuts and could they be 25 basis points or 50 basis points. Doesn't matter what that speculation is when the market's not bidding that way anyway. So if we start seeing the market bid that way coming into the next FOMC meetings in Q4, then sure, maybe we can start entertaining that. But even then, the market has to adjust. And I think the market is taking it a month by month, meeting by meeting, economic data report by economic data report basis. And I know that there are some that disagree and it's all phony and it's all manipulated and all that stuff. It doesn't, well, you can believe that, but the market is moving based on that data. So understand that that's very important to pay attention to, even if you don't believe that the numbers are accurate, which many don't. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If you're looking for trade setups and what to look to, you need to understand what that sentiment is and does it match reality. And right now, the sentiment is not matching reality for what the market is doing. We'll see if that changes as we come into the close of the month and quarterly. Right now, Bitcoin is still in a good position, right? 112 is the area we were looking for. Bulls just want to see it hold up. If it doesn't, look to the dailies, essentially 111 to 109.5 down below in this purple zone. Anywhere below 109.5, we're getting expansion on the daily, potentially to go hit, 109 and then possibly threaten that last higher low at 108, 250 to 107, 250 by the daily lower third. Anywhere below there, and this thing's going to be dumping out further. I'd be looking somewhere around that median and daily around 105. Could it potentially go for more? 104. Could it get front run at 106? Sure. But essentially, I'd be looking to this daily down here. And pay very close attention this week to price action and closes. And I will keep reminding you of that on Wednesday and Friday. The other thing that I mentioned last week to watch very closely was the weekly higher low structure on Ethereum. We saw Ethereum reject the 4630 level here, coming up to around 4650, consolidate around the 4500 and just below, and then dump out to 4200 and below, even hitting 4K. Now that's just around 4K. For spot, it was like just above 4K there at $4,060. Could it go for 4K? Absolutely. This is a range. Now, this could potentially turn into something interesting as a setup for the longs, but it needs to hold this this downside between right around 4K to 3,900. If it starts to dump below there, then we're looking at expansion to the downside to hit some further levels. The upper $3,000 level, 3,750 to essentially 3,600, 3,500 on swings, and maybe even more to the downside. Back to the upside, we need to see closes back above 4,650 now, and regain that level at 4,600 to 4,630 on the weekly. And you can see that the weekly painting a lower high as it stands right now on any closes below around 4,500. And well, actually it's going to be around 4,400. And realistically, this was a nice big expansion. Could we get mean reversion to like 3,500? Sure. But watch the supports to the downside. I think it's okay above 3,900 to 4K. But if it does start to drop it, then we have to entertain some further downside moves to the upper $3,000 level, to possibly mid $3,000 level at 3,500. 5-day already locked in, lower high trend reversal setup with the last higher low already being breached right now with a swing lower low and a closed lower low. So this setup got confirmed already on this 5-day. But again, this is mean reversion as it stands right now. This is expansion into compression. It's not compression into expansion. So I still stay with the outlook of above 3,900 to 4K. It's fine and expected. So that is going to do it for me today. Not really going to look at anything else. We can follow up with maybe a little bit more, like on BNB, Solana, and a few others. Maybe a look at traditional markets midweek on Wednesday's check-in. But I want to wish you a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. Go ahead and share this out there. Make sure people are prepared. Make sure you're prepared for both sides of the trade, and watch price closing on the daily very closely as we head into some of these higher term time frame closes near the end of the week. Take care. I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Landy out.